Hi, this is Mike from BandLab. With BandLab's included instruments and effects, you can make any kind of music you like. In this video, we'll show you how to make a Phonk house beat with dirty drums, sinister cowbells, and heavy bass. You can open this project yourself with the link in the video description. And if you find this guide useful, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to be the first to know when new videos drop. I begin by setting the project tempo to 118 beats per minute and the project key to G minor. The first element I'm going to create is the drum track. I add a virtual instrument track and set it to drum pads, new house. I sequence a beat that plays the kick on every beat, the clap on every other beat, and open hats between the beats. I duplicate this bar out to fill the rest of the 4-bar clip. To duplicate notes or clips in BandLab, hold Option on Mac or Alt on Windows and drag them over. I set this track to -9 dB to give me more headroom to add other elements. I'd like to dirty this sound up, so in the effects panel I add a distortion BL driver effect. I turn the tone all the way up and set the drive to 0.3. I then add a distortion bit crusher effect. I set the intensity to 6% and the bits to 9. Next, I want a pad sample to create an atmospheric vibe. I open BandLab's Sounds and click the Loops tab, then set the instrument filter to pad and the genre filter to electronic. I drag MSP1 138 pad shade G sharp minor into the project. I set this track to -8.7 dB. I want to cut the first 2 bars of the sample, so I position the playhead at the end of the first bar and press S to slice the sample. You can also select Edit, Slice at Playhead. I'll use that method to slice the sample at the end of the second bar. I delete the unwanted audio after the slices I've created. I use duplication to have the first bar play for the first 2 bars, then have the second bar play for the final 2 bars. I want to thin this sound out to help the other elements pop through the mix, so in the effects panel I add a tone multi-filter. I turn the resonance all the way down and set the frequency to 440 Hz. I then add another multi-filter, this time setting it to high pass mode, before turning the resonance down and setting the frequency to 280 Hz. Now I need some Phonk cowbells. In BandLab Sounds, I select the Packs tab and enter Phonk into the text search field. I open the Phonk Loops pack. I set the instrument filter to lead. Phonk Blip 150 Melodies C minor 8 bars is the sort of sound I'm looking for. I want to be able to make my own melody, so I create a new sampler track and drag the sample into the first pad. I move the sample end marker to the end of the first cowbell. I set this pad's pitch to -5 to tune it down to G, the root note of our track. I then duplicate the sample onto the second sample pad, To duplicate the sample pads, hold down Option on Mac or Alt on Windows and drag them over. I set this one's pitch to -4. I then create another copy with the pitch setting of 0. I now have 3 differently pitched cowbells I can use to create a melody. I set the track to -7 dB. I sequence a melody that I feel works with the pad sample. To make the cowbell sound busier and more atmospheric, I add a delay, ping-pong delay effect. I set the mix to 9% to make the effect less intense. I then add a reverb, studio reverb. Setting the mix to 38%, the size to 59%, and the tone to 21%. Now I need a bass line. I add a new virtual instrument track and set it to Synth Basses, Sine Bass. I set this track to -6 dB. I program a simple bass line that plays G, B flat, D, and B flat. I want to dirty this bass up too, so I add a bit crusher. I set its intensity to 6% and bits to 8. I'd also like a vocal sample. In BandLab's Sounds, I opened the Super Phonk pack and set the instrument filter to voice. I drag Super Phonk 156 vocals 2 bars into the project. I set this track to -1 dB. I chop the sample so that it stutters the phrase. I add a ping-pong delay effect, setting the mix to 14%. Now I have all the elements I need to create an arrangement. I begin the arrangement with just the cowbell, adding the pad on bar 5. The vocal comes in on bar 9. On bar 13, the beats and bass drop. On bar 17, the vocal takes a break. On bar 21, the pad is swapped out for the vocal. Bar 29, the cowbell is swapped out for the pad. On bar 37, the bass and vocal drop out. On bar 41, the drums drop out, and we have a simple pad outro. Remember, you can fork this project and make your own version of it using the link in the video description. Have fun!